Quest Software has solutions that allow you to add an additional layer of security to your Microsoft environment. To learn how they can help you protect and detect changes in your environment, please go to quest.com/MPM. Make sure your team is prepared to fight off the latest cybersecurity threat. IT Pro TV is the resource to keep you and your IT team skills up to date. You can stream IT Pro TV's courses live and on demand worldwide, so there's no need to send staff to off-site training. Their team solution provides access to a supervisor portal for full control over your team's training schedule and group analytics. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30 to try it free for 7 days and receive 30% off your monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription. To learn more about IT Pro TV's team solution, sign up for a free demo of their supervisor portal. Pony Express. Check out their line of penetration testing devices, including the Pwn Pad, Pwn Phone, and Pwn Pro. For enterprises, there's Pwn Pulse, providing continuous visibility into wired, Wi-Fi, and Bluetooth spectrums across all physical locations, including remote sites and branch offices. For all those hard-to-reach places, there's Pony Express. Visit them on the web at ponyexpress.com. Myself, Joff Thayer, and Zane Lackey from Signal Sciences will be delivering a webcast on November 2nd. Joff and I are going to talk about some of the struggles that web applications have in providing security and being secure. And Zane's going to talk about some of the things that he's experienced at Etsy and his products and strategies that he created today as part of Signal Sciences and how they help their customers. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you go to securityweekly.com/Signal Sciences if you want to learn how to protect your web applications. This Saturday, Providence HackerCon is happening. It's an event that started out for Cyber Patriot students. Those are high school students here in Rhode Island that are part of the Cyber Patriot program. They will be there, as well as anyone else who's interested in providing our youth today with access to information about cybersecurity and how to get into the field. So if you want to be, a part of that, you can come down to Providence this Saturday, October 21st. You can register at securityweekly.com/ProvHackCon, and hang out with us for the day. John, why don't you start us off by take a sip of water?
Yeah, you bet. So the first story that I absolutely thought was really, really cool was LogRhythm and their AI cloud service. And what I'm trying to figure out, and Paul, you might know because you talk with the folks at LogRhythm more than I do. Now, it appears to me like they're actually doing a lot of their quote-unquote artificial intelligence in the cloud. So you're not actually doing that type of heavy load processing on site. Is that kind of how you read this as well? I mean, I went to the LogRhythm website, I read up everything, and I think it's cool. It's in line with what you and I talk about all the time of artificial intelligence coupled with an actual analyst to make something really, really amazing. But I'm trying to figure out, is this actually something that's running on site? I know it says cloud AI, so I'd assume that it's in the cloud, but I was just wondering if you had any more information on this at all.
Yeah, I believe you can take data from your local network, stuff it up to the cloud, and LogRhythm will apply those smart analytics to it. Conversation I had with them was a while back now, and I don't remember all the details, but I'm sure we'll have someone from LogRhythm on to talk more about this. I know they were really excited about it, and it's basically building on and largely an extension of all the smart stuff that they put into their product, which, to kind of segue a little bit, right, is one of the most complete solutions for organizations, in my opinion. I know they're a sponsor of our shows, but when I look at LogRhythm solutions and speak with them, it's very complete. You know, they've got the endpoint covered, they've got the network covered, they've got the logging and analytics covered, they've got an integration with threat intelligence feeds, and they put that together in a cohesive product. There's not too many products on the market today that do that, first of all, and I don't know of anyone else that comes close to providing that much of a cohesive solution other than LogRhythm.
Well, and the other thing that we keep on driving home all the time is LogRhythm sales and marketing, and what they're doing, I think, is something that a lot of organizations that are trying to sell a product need to take a page from. They're basically selling a product that enables people to be better at their jobs. They're not trying to replace people. And we could, like, once again, they are a sponsor, but they are a sponsor for a reason, because we are kind of hard on many of our sponsors that come on this show quite a bit. So that was the first one that I liked. I really liked that article because I think that that's moving artificial intelligence into the cloud for large data analytics, pulling it away from the local network. Can be somewhat problematic for some people, but as you and I have discussed, get used to it.
Yeah.
That's where everything is going. The next story, I don't know if you're ready to jump in, if you're still having coughing fits. The next one is CloudLock. So this was interesting. I'm wondering, so we spent a lot of time talking about CASBs and what a huge deal this is. And right now, I'm still seeing a tremendous amount of hype in the space, and there's lots of vendors that are in the space. I'm not seeing this really implemented all that much in organizations at the moment. I see some organizations that are looking into it, but not nearly as many as should be looking into the problem. Like you and I always talk about, identify what the problem is, and I think that this article does a great job of that by stating, hey, we had this recent Google attack where there was a malicious app that got injected into people's basically they clicked the link, installed the app, and then it took off and it took over other computer systems, kind of old school Anna Kournikova virus style, spreading around. And I think that that highlights the dangers, but I still haven't seen a lot of people moving forward to try to implement solutions to defend against these types of attacks, even though there's lots of vendors in the space right now. I'm not seeing it being picked up as much as I'd like, and I wanted to kind of get your take on that.
Yeah, I still think that many organizations, when we look at authentication, they're very focused on user credentials. And there's lots of companies. I think CyberArk is one of the companies in the news this week, right? Companies like and some newer players as well. They're focused on privilege management or credentialed identity management. And that comes down to managing passwords, managing single sign-on, maybe managing two-factor authentication that plays into it. And it's very much user-focused, focused on the user credentials. I think what a lot of people don't realize, what OAuth is creating is now more problems in that space, but they're really two different ones because it hits the user, like you described, John. The user gets tricked into trusting some application. That's pretty much the same thing as giving someone your credentials, your username, and your password. It's just branded as this like OAuth thing, and it's a different. You're trusting that, right? Keys and client IDs and stuff. The other problem is
apps.
In the apps, right? But the user is part of that process in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I know this because we have an application here that uses OAuth to trust between applications. And I think that's something even further out on your scale that organizations just are not looking at. So, I've talked about our PPWorks application, which I'll continue to talk about on the show because I think it's fun, and certainly where it can be interjected into a security conversation. It's something that I've been working with many developers over time to create this software. One of the aspects is our application has to be authenticated to some other service, let's call it YouTube, to give the application the ability to post videos, to change videos, to delete videos as part of the data API in YouTube. There's an OAuth exchange that happens there. And how do you secure and provide integrity for those connections? And there's like a whole different set of issues, and that actually hits in and segues into some of our other stories about how do you protect the secrets. I mean, even Richard was talking about, we were talking about crypto. How do you protect these secrets when the user really isn't involved? This is an application problem. There's lots of vendors in the space now trying to provide this, but I think back to your point, John, on the scale of things in your security department, I don't think there's a whole ton of people focused on this issue.
And they need to, and they absolutely need to. So two like narratives on that. First, Kent from BHIS, one of our systems administrators that does webcasts quite a bit for us. He's gone through and audited all of the applications that are enabled through Black Hills Information Security's accounts for all of our employees, and it's just earth-shattering. There's tons of applications that are just now have access to your email, they have access to your files, and that type of creep of the applications that have access is going to be huge because now we're looking at let's say one vendor, just hypothetically, let's say some type of document management vendor that allows you to sign something like PDFs. If there's a vulnerability or they get compromised, they now have a direct inroad to all of their customers across the board, and that's a problem. The other thing is, and this is what we're releasing next week, it's up on the Wild West Hack and Manifest website. I can talk a little bit more about it now. Mike and Bo have been working together, and we've created a framework now at BHIS. And what happens is if you can phish a user, get them to enter a user ID, password, and their two-factor authentication, and we have a full framework for setting that up, it can automatically add an application with the application password in their Google Apps domain. And then it'll automatically set up a rule to delete any security emails coming from Google. And then it'll automatically give you the ability to search through emails and files on the back end. And the reason why we're trying to release this is to kind of start highlighting just how dangerous this whole CASB thing is. And it's not CASBs, but what CASBs are trying to solve, how dangerous this issue is. It's effectively hacking like 1995, 1998. It's wide open once you're in.
Yep. And so along the lines of secrets protection, CyberArk and Puppet have released a partnership or some kind of strategic partnership that...
I don't know what this is. Sorry.
Well, so basically, and we talked with someone on the show. It might have been last week when you weren't here. Oh, no, it was on Startup Security Weekly. We talked to Liz from Conjure, who's now owned by... Is it CyberArk that owns them?
It's owned by CyberArk. They bought them. Yeah, CyberArk.
So we actually talked with Liz about some of this stuff last week, or one of the more recent Startup Security Weeklies. So essentially, the problem comes down to, the setting is you've got this company, CyberArk, that is in the business of managing credentials for applications and users, and we've got this new DevOps thing, which is deploying applications at a very, very rapid rate, and has for some time. And going back to my previous example in PBWorks, how do you manage the credentials and the trust between applications when you're in a DevOps environment? And maybe if you have something like a CyberArk, how do you start tying these things together? And there's a lot of companies that have different solutions. So where Puppet comes in is maybe I'm using Puppet to manage all of my applications, which also means the foundation is, in order for Puppet to make configuration changes on systems, it requires a level of trust. How do you manage those trust relationships between systems when you're using all this third-party software? And then how do you have applications that can go get a secret to then be trusted to some other application, some other API, or what have you? And so this partnership is working on basically that automation process and how you allow things to be trusted between each other when you're in this new DevOps environment, for example.
Yep. And one of the main concerns I have with a lot of this is, the idea CyberArk is actually a fantastic product. We've tested organizations that have it in play. Whenever it's configured properly, it is very good. I think it was Will, or I can't remember, Harmjoy, or one of those people from SpecterOps a while ago, back whenever they were with that previous company whose name I honestly can't remember right
Varus
now.
Group.
Varus, there we go. They actually had nothing but good things to say about CyberArk whenever it's actually implemented properly as well. The concern I have is at some point, are we getting to kind of a tipping point with the complexity of all this type of credential management? And is the solution that we're putting in tying in something like CyberArk, Conjure, and then integrating it with Puppet and then doing local administrator, at what point does that complexity start to become an enemy? Now, to be sure, it's better to do something like this.
I'd argue it already.
Local administrator passwords on all of the systems.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful when implementing these solutions, because when we've tested them, if there is a vulnerability in an application like CyberArk, you crack that, then it basically opens up the entire network.
Right.
And you have to be very careful about how you maintain that access and kind of getting the keys to the kingdom. Yeah,
complexity is already the enemy, I think, when we talk about many of these topics, such as we talk about containers and DevOps. Complexity is most, and then you like you said, you tie in some kind of privilege management system. It is very complex, and that is a great concern of mine, especially as I look at how, for example, just last month, Docker published some guidance and guidelines on what are the best practices to create a development process when you're using Docker containers. And it's pretty complex. I kind of think back to when we all just had a version control system, and that's what we used as our platform to develop as a team. Now that's just one part of the system. It's just one small part. I mean, you could argue that it really was just one part of the system back then, but now it's a very much more streamlined, rapid development process, and it goes beyond just version control, and it does get complex, and that is a concern of mine. And I think some of the complexity is just, it could be new to me. And there are certainly a number of companies and a lot of developers that are way farther ahead of the curve. And I open invitation to anyone who can help, shed some light that's done this, because it's still a small. Well, there are a lot of people. It's a small percentage of people and companies that are developing in this manner.
And I think that hits. I think that kind of hits the heart of the matter, right? We're seeing all these vendors in this new space. We're talking about Docker security. We're talking about Swarm. We're talking about container security. We're talking about CASVs. We're talking about all of these different types of security that are now coming out. And I think that it's perfectly acceptable to stand up every once in a while and say, hey, I need to talk to somebody like Rich Mogul and bring them in and get an expert opinion, because there's so few experts in this area.
Yes.
There's lots of people that talk. I mean, you and I talk all the time on the show, and we have opinions.
Yeah.
But a lot of times that opinion is actually kind of founded with the people that we've talked with that are experts in this area, like Richard Mogul and Securosis. And I think they changed their name to something else. I can't remember. But find those experts in this area and start watching presentations and working with them as much as possible.
Yeah, one of those, it's funny you say that. One of those experts is someone else we had on the show from StackRox, and now I can't remember his name, and I'm hoping I'm not confusing the companies too. I think this is where my...
No, I thought we had someone from StackRox.
We did. Who is it? Ali Gulshan?
Ali Gulshan.
Yes, yes, that's where my friend Melinda works, and he was certainly one of those people that I would identify as hands down an expert in this arena. He came on the show and dropped some serious knowledge about this, and has a startup in this space that's helping organizations with security of containers and Docker and Kubernetes specifically. So, and they just had a product announcement. They've furthered their announcement. What I liked about this announcement, not so much the technical aspect of it, but the fact that the technical things that they've implemented, they call out very specifically, came from working with customers and understanding their problems better. And that's how it's done when you have a startup, certainly. And John and I, in fact, are going through it right now with OCM as well. I mean, that's our strategy as well. So, not that people are following us. We're following other people in that model going, yes, you have to have a set of customers. You have to listen to them. And there's a whole... you can't implement every feature from every customer, but certainly understanding the problem better by working with your existing customers is something that I believe StackRox is doing very well, in speaking with them and reading this article this week. So,
yep, and that orchestration you mentioned Kubernetes. I don't know if you saw, but Docker basically is now supporting Kubernetes. They're going to integrate. Because they have Docker Swarm, of course. Kubernetes is by, I
so
think
are they
Google
getting rid of
behind that?
Are they not supporting Swarm in favor of or is it?
I don't think they're going that far, but I think that's eventually where this is headed, because as you know, the vast majority of organizations, as far as container orchestration, is basically using Kubernetes, and I think Docker has just bowed to that and is now moving in that direction. Gotcha. So, and that's a huge thing. I mean, if you're looking into that type of container security, something like StackRox is awesome, but you also need to look at how the orchestration and updates and that type of management of your containers is going to work as well.
Yeah, I would say do that first, or in conjunction with a security solution such as StackRox, and don't do it the way I was learning it. And write shell scripts to automate. That's not the right way. That was just a Band-Aid. We're learning, though. We're learning. It's awesome. I love working with Docker. It's so much fun. My interns right now are learning Docker. I'm sorry. It's gonna suck, but you got to learn it. And once you do, and get over some of that, speaking of that complexity, right? You have to understand that complexity. I guess it's like anything else, that we learn in this field, John.
But the hard part is there's so little information to actually learn it.
Right? Like when we were learning at TCP/IP, there was lots of experts we could call on, and great books and a really defined standard. But in some of today's technology,
and now you got a book on this crap, and it's like, oh, that's out of date already. It's like, God damn it, already? Okay,
we're on to Angular 4, John. It's Angular 4.
We're on God. No,
we're on 4 now. It's a bit, 4 is the latest version now. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't.
All right, never mind. Forget I said that.
You're just a pain in the ass today. Speaking of pain in the ass, moving right along, I really, really like what Elusive is doing.
I think this is really cool.
In here. Illusive actually standing up cyber deception for mainframes. And usually, as a general pen tester, you know this very well, we see a mainframe and we stop. It's like, nope, we're not touching that at all.
Yeah.
But a real malicious attacker, as soon as they see that, man, that's right there. That's the absolute heart of the matter for a lot of organizations, where their most sensitive transactions are, and they will absolutely go for that. So I think that this is cool. Coming up with some mainframe like security kind of emulation for honeypots. So hats off to them for moving in this direction, which I thought was cool.
What I think is kind of ironic in this light is that I really truly believe that mainframes set the stage for really good security. And we got away from that for a long time. And I think we're coming back to some of those same constructs, especially as we talk about containers and virtualization and privilege identity management and identity access control. That was security in the mainframe environment back in the 70s, right? And it never left.
70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And it was never meant to, like, IT back then was never meant to move as fast as it's moving now.
Yeah,
but these core
difference.
business functions, you talk about these mainframes. I can't remember what they said in the article. Like the high 80s of all financial transactions are still going through these mainframe systems, and IBM is still maintaining and coming up with new releases of these mainframe systems. And I think that that ties back with our guest. A lot of these really systems that have to be secure. Once we find a vulnerability in those particular systems, that really is something ground shaking that a lot of people just don't see, because it's not a standard Windows or a Linux vulnerability or an Apache vulnerability. It's at the core of networks.
Yeah. Carbon Black it impresses me in this one aspect especially, and that is the strategic partnerships and integrations that they have are just stunning. I mean, they're just like all over integrations. Now, I don't know how well they work or how involved their integrations are. A lot of them seem to make perfect sense. I know LogRhythm did a lot of integration work with Carbon Black. I know that a lot of like threat intelligence platforms also integrate with Carbon Black. So, like, I mean, their integrations-wise, like, they are like on. I don't know if they're on point, but they're certainly in a lot of places and integrate with a lot of stuff.
No, I think that where they're at is they're what people want to integrate with.
Yeah.
Not so much that our Carbon Black is going out and trying to partner with a bunch of people, but if you look at what Carbon Black has, like the ability to pull down all the process, the file opens, and absolutely everything that's going on in a system, then if you're dealing in any way with doing process tracking, or you're dealing in any way with the SIM solution, then Carbon Black is something that you want to hook into. You want to make sure that you work with Carbon Black because they have a tremendous amount of data. So yeah, we see a lot of organizations that are implementing Carbon Black. And more importantly, yesterday we had a webcast with Pink Tangent, and she did a presentation at Black Hat on endpoint security bypass. And she came right out and she's like, Carbon Black is one of the good ones. If there's a vulnerability, a bypass, something there, Carbon Black goes through and fixes it. And we need more of that in the industry.
Has she released her tools and methods yet, John, or is she still waiting?
Yes.
Oh, she has. Okay.
Yep, she has. Yeah, if you do a Google search for her, it takes you to her spreadsheets where she goes through the different methodologies and all the different things that she does to test these products, and where she gets her samples and how she approaches it. So that has been released. And she's also working on a full training platform as well to kind of walk people through step by step how to do this exactly. So that's coming down the road.
Fantastic. Love it. I can't wait to check it out. I didn't know that she'd actually released it. So.
Yep.
Sweet. I've never heard of a Vecto. Apparently, they set a new benchmark for privilege management implementations, and they made a
apparently product. Also, just so you know, Vecto is a market leader.
Yes.
In privilege management.
Yes, I had not heard of them, and I think there's a lot of vendors in this space, and I think it's a really something that over the course of this year, especially, we've seen a lot of growth in this particular sector of security. So I want to just mention they made a product announcement. I don't know much more other than the lots of marketing speak in their press release.
Yep, and Sammy was referenced in this article, and I've been at presentations with him, and he's a good guy.
Sammy,
as much as I'd like to crap, Liho.
Oh, okay.
He was introduced to me as Sammy, and he seems like a really solid guy, and so I was happy to see him show up. That was neat. But this looks like it's another privilege management vendor.
Now, I found this kind of interesting. Tanium expands its security platform with asset modules, and they are now integrating with ServiceNow. What I find interesting is that from what I understand, Tanium is very much an agent-based solution.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you combine an agent-based solution with asset management, I guess you are managing the assets you know about. You still need something in there for asset discovery. And I feel that that's like step 0 in asset management is asset discovery.
Well,
and you can't put an agent on something if you don't know you have it. And so, I mean,
and that's,
go ahead.
dude, that's like control group number 1 and 2 from the critical controls, right?
Right.
You got to know what your environment is, and you got to have an automated asset discovery. And I thought the exact same thing as well. And it was funny. One of the vendors wanted to show me their new system for asset discovery and automatically provisioning their agent on. So what they did is, and it's not Tanium, it was another vendor. What they did is they were scanning the network. And as soon as a new Windows system came up and it had SMB running on it, they would automatically try to authenticate to that system and install their agent on it. And I was like, wait a minute, can't someone just run like SMB capture and capture your password hash and then authenticate? And they're like, oh, crap, we probably need to rethink this.
Yeah,
probably. But it's a tough problem, right? It's something that you can automate it, but there are risks associated with it as well.
Yeah, and asset discovery is... God, we should do a whole show on asset discovery. I've got a lot of experience with that from Tenable. Of course, you can look in your logs, you can look on the network, look at your DHCP, DNS query. I mean, there's lots of ways to
tables on switches.
Yeah, but now
logs,
correlating all of that data together is and just figuring out what's happening. That's where the hard part comes in. Awake Security has a unique product in that space, and there's a couple other vendors in that kind of new emerging category of not just asset discovery, but being able to define and discover new assets that come along and some of the metadata about them. Like, is it a Linux system? Is it a Windows system? Which I think is really cool in a cool new category. So I think that's there was, I just over the air software updates. I think they're important, but
I do too. This might actually be a whole show in and of itself. I mean, we just did a blog post a few months ago, Paul, where David Fletcher was intercepting the over-the-air update for his car, and it was all sent clear HTTP, no encryption. This might be an entire conversation in and of itself.
Secure over-the-air updates, which it reminds me, I've got to my Android phone told me that my car needed to be updated. I was like, that's pretty.
Which is really creepy, right?
It was a creepy message. I need to get a screenshot of it because it was a very scary message. But I think because I keep up with the Android updates very religiously on my phone, and my car doesn't tell me that it needs it. Well, it does. I think I have to log into the web interface, and it'll tell me that I need. My car is a web. It's like a cloud web login. It's a GMC thing, which reminds me of a bar conversation I had with someone at DEF CON that works on the security team at GMC. He agreed to come on the show. We need to get him on the show. That's a good show to have to talk about this topic, John, because it's very much centered on the automobile industry. Although I like to also think of it's not over the air, but my Ring doorbell does a great job of applying updates automatically. They had that vulnerability a while back and were able to update everyone's doorbells. And I say that because I'm thinking about getting one for the studio.
We actually, Wildwest Hack and Fest, we're going to have a lab where everyone can hack wireless doorbells and make them ding just by driving up and down their streets. So that'll be fun.
That'll be fun. Fantastic. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Thank John, as always, and our special guest, Richard Moulds. That concludes this edition of Enterprise Security Weekly. Thanks, everyone, for listening and watching. See you next time.